Hello. Thank you for listening. We're going to go live in about 2 minutes, and it's going to be an interesting show because today I'm going to do things I normally don't do. In that respect, I'm hoping to have some panelists join me today. I gave them the link, and my goal today is to share information that people are afraid to share. It's normally what I do in this show. Um, and I don't consider telling what's truthful controversial. It's only truth is only controversial for those who are afraid of it. So you're going to hear a lot of different things today. We're going to start out with scriptures, of course. That was the 1 minute warning. um, my goal today is again to get the gospel message out. What am I saying? The gospel message is that Jesus Christ died on the cross for our sins. And because of his great love, because of his work, because he first loved us, we have a chance at being joint heirs with him. What do I mean by a chance? He gives it to us. All we have to do is believe. So while we're going to be talking about the Islamic concept of heaven, we're going to take it apart. And I want you to understand this concept that exists, and we're going to talk about it. I don't think it's talked about enough, and I will tell you why. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hello, welcome to the Sutliffian Report. Today, we are going to have a discussion on the Islamic concept of heaven, what they'll call Jannah, paradise. We're going to get into that. But before we get into that, and then into the news for the week, and believe me, there's a lot of it. I want to get started with a reading of God's word. Now, First Corinthians is going to be the newest devotional I'm going to be putting out. So this is a small taste of it. 1 Corinthians 1, 22 to 31. For the Jews require a sign, and the Greeks seek after wisdom. But we preach Christ crucified, unto the Jews a stumbling block, and unto the Greeks foolishness. But unto them which are called, both Jews and Greeks, Christ, the power of God and the wisdom of God. Because the foolishness of God is wiser than men, and the weakness of God is stronger than men. For you see your calling, brethren, how that not many wise men after the flesh, not many mighty, not many noble are called. But God has chosen the foolish things of this world to confound the wise. And God has chosen the weak things of the world to confound the things which are mighty. And the base things of the world, and things which are despised has God chosen, yea, and things which are not, to bring to naught things that are, that no flesh should glory in his presence. But of him are you in Christ Jesus, who of God is made unto us wisdom and righteousness and sanctification and redemption, that according as it is written, he that glories, let him glory in the Lord. The foolishness of God is wiser than men, and the weakness of God is stronger than men. I have met many men and women who think they know enough to proclaim themselves wise enough to declare there's no God, and that there are many ways to heaven. That's what they say. I've been a lover of logic and God's wisdom in creating this knowledge to point out the foolishness of such statements. The more people I meet, the more this verse rings true to me. I may never know what the foolishness of God is, except that he chose me. And the humor in thinking about it is that this choice is wiser than any man. He chose me, and he chose you. It's up to you. Put yourself in that thought. It should make you smile. Our God loves us so much that his choice for each and every one of us may seem foolish to us, but it is God's wisdom or his foolishness, and both are wiser than men. Isn't this a reason to give him praise and give him all the glory? There are so many things in this world that place vanity and love of self above all else. Yet it is the example of Jesus Christ on the cross, dying for our sins, that teaches us the greatness of self-sacrifice, the greatness of love that goes beyond our understanding, the greatness of his love that overpowers and envelops us into his arms. There is nothing better. This is a reason to give him the glory. Dear Lord Jesus, I thank you that you chose me. I may never understand that as wisdom. Lord, you chose us. Thank you. I know your foolishness is wiser than any human wisdom. Because, Lord, you chose me. You set my feet on your rock. Mold me, Lord. Mold us and make us after your will. Move us that we may stand for you and show others to this great unending love that you have to share, that breaks down barriers and takes us into your loving arms. In Jesus' name, amen. So this week we're going to do something different, and I'm hoping to have some panelists join me pretty soon. We'll see. This is the first time I've asked panelists to join. We'll see. This week I discovered an article written by Ronnie Berggren. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right because it's Swedish. He's a conservative debater and author who asked some incredibly good questions this past October for the Samnit. Now, I often question if I'm pronouncing that right, and I keep getting told it's correct, but it's a Swedish newspaper, Swedish news source is what I should say. His article, Muhammad Needs to be Problematized, Not Romanticized, starts out with important points that I want to take apart and address. So with that said, if you're listening in BTR, you're definitely going to want to go to the YouTube link that I shared, because what I'm going to share will blow your mind. Let me see if I can set this up just a second. And I'm going to go and hit this nice button here. And one more time. Home, home, home. Where are you? Okay. Hold on just a second. I've got to work to get where I am. This is the joy of teaching, of sharing things. Share screen. Here we go. All right. So the concept today, the heaven of Islam, is this truly what you want your neighbor believing? Give him Christ, people, because this topic should blow your mind. This is the reason why Constantinople fell. This is the reason why Islamization works. Their concept of heaven. It's much different than the Christian example. It's much different than any concept of heaven. And you're going to hear some of these things, and I'm going to give them to you straight from their scriptures, reading their sources. And it's not stuff that I've made up, as you'll be able to see. It's stuff that comes straight from their sources. So let's get into this. And just a second, I have to get back in so I can see. All right. And here we go. So Ronnie Berggren, he wrote, Muhammad needs to be problematized, not romanticized. Today in the West, he writes, flattering images of this prophet is often drawn. But Muhammad was a warlord who murdered, tortured, and took sex slaves and instilled his followers with notions where hedonism and violence were considered divine. In paradise awaited a cycle of eternal sexual experiences with women who were always virgins and beaten men who always stood. The way to this paradise was through war, to kill infidels. And if in this struggle, you showed so much courage that you yourself fell, the way to this paradise was open. Now, let's think about that. Now, I'm going to pull in some important concepts that we need to think about. Let's take a look in just this week in the news. And see if this comes up. All right. Waiting to see if this actually, okay, good. All right. As you can see, this source, household Negro, Walla, we will behead you, dark-skinned. And I've got to turn off my sound for YouTube. Okay. Household Negro, Walla, we will behead you, dark-skinned Eric Zamor, activist, harassed and threatened. For those of you who do not know who Eric Zamor is, he's actually someone I've met personally and spoken with and given him a copy of my second book, Civilization, Jihad, and the Myth of Modern Islam. I met him in 2016, which I found greatly pleasing. He's a very, very interesting man. So let's get into this article by Fred Allen Medforth. Fred Allen Medforth translated this. He writes, so the translation goes, the threats have been getting stronger and stronger over the past month. As Le Figaro reports, the threat to Tanguy David, a declared supporter of Eric Zamor, has intensified since he started attending the man's meetings. What's the reason? His skin color. Does that surprise you? It should. In several pictures of the meeting held by the publicist on December 5th in Villepétain, Saint-Saint-Denis, the young law student and head of a local branch of Generation Z could be seen standing behind the candidate. Obviously, his skin color and his political commitment not really go together. Oh, really? Skin color and his commitment don't go together? Is that a racist statement? Yes, it is. They apparently don't think Black people can have different political choices. They don't have, they're not allowed to have their own mind. This stuff should shock you and make you abhorrent. So why is this important? Because this man has received death threats because he is Black and he is supporting him, and he's sporting the idea that France is for the French. The French are for the French. That's the idea. The natives should keep France. That's what it is. They're upset. They're willing to kill. Why? Because their concept of heaven is willing that they should accept. Yeah, we're going to get into that. This concept of heaven, they're allowed to kill for, to get into. They're allowed to die to get into. Their concept of jihad. Is this really something? Yeah, let me see if I can just X out of that. That's the difficulty I have here. Okay. All right. Let's take a look at one more article, a couple more articles here, and I'm still hoping somebody will join us, but we'll get into it as soon as I'm done here. All right. Let's talk about what happened in Kenya this week. Here's the next one. Just got to wait for it to pop up. Okay. 3 killed in suicide attack in Kenya. Kisumu County Police, a commander and his wife died during the blast on Tuesday evening in Nyaka area, while the attacker also died on the spot after detonating himself. So this guy is a member of Al-Shabaab, and he blew himself up when he was asking people questions about Islam, and they had no clue how to answer the questions. So because they weren't Muslim, he killed them. It was a husband and wife, and their daughter also was injured. So the 3 that died, the bomber and the husband and wife, and that child is left parentless, motherless and fatherless. because they weren't jihadis. Again, all for their concept of heaven. Let's go again. Again, I'm only talking about stuff this week, people. This week. That last article came out December 8th. Just waiting for this next one to pop up. Here we go. Try it one more time. At least 30 killed in suspected jihadi attack in central Mali. Gunmen spray passenger vehicle with bullets, then set it alight. Women, children among the dead. This came out December 4th, people, or only a few days ago. Suspected jihadis in central Mali killed at least 30 civilians in an attack on a passenger vehicle in the volatile central town of Mopti, local officials said Saturday. The passengers were sprayed with bullets and the vehicle was torched during an attack. The state has sent security forces to the scene. The mayor, Husseini Say, okay, you're catching that he's Muslim. The state has sent security forces to the scene, they said, speaking on condition of anonymity. The shooting caused the truck to catch fire. 31 people dead. Most of them burned to death. Several injured, 2 missing. But that's okay because the jihadi is getting his ticket to paradise. Last one I'm going to cover, and then we're going to start getting into the Islamic pictures of heaven, the Islamic concepts using their scriptures. I mean, let's think about this. Is this reality, people? Are we seeing this daily from what you're seeing? How about this one? Germany court sentences Islamist who recruited fighters for the Islamic State. He's sentenced to more than 3 years in prison. 3.5 years he gets. 3.5 years. Again, this came out the 4th of December. It's a 28-year-old who's been promoting the Islamic State. Now, if you don't know, under Sharia and thanks to the Quran, if you promote and recruit or you provide income to jihadis, you have an equal right to join in the reward, which would be for them the 72 virgins, if that is what the Islamic thing of heaven is. Again, we're going to use their scriptures. So I'm saying if, and why am I saying if? Because we're going to use their scriptures, not by what I say. All right. Not by what anybody else says. I'm not even looking at Islamic scholars. I want to look at and find out if this is exactly what they are saying. This becomes all important because we need to look at exactly that. What are the Islamic scholars saying? Okay. Again, why should the Islamic concept of heaven be questioned? Now, I love this piece. Constantinople in the early 8th century, the emperor of Byzantium, Leo III, got into a polemic with rulers of the Muslims and wrote about paradise. He said, "We Christians do not expect to find sources of wine, honey, and milk there. We don't expect eternal contact with women." Boy, is he being polite. Who remain virgins. See, he left out that sexual term. He was, again, it was considered distasteful to do this, to mention this stuff. But again, keep listening. "We have no faith in such stories created out of ignorance and paganism. But you who live for these urges see no purpose in a paradise without these women." Now, that's really important to think about. They have no concept or desire for heaven without the women. So is their God all about sex? This is a question to ask. Again, we're going to look at the Islamic scriptures. What do they say? So let's take a look. Quranic verses on heaven, Islamic paradise, the limits, and I say this, the limits of a desert mind. And hold on just a second, please. Oh, bummer. Bummer, I thought I was hoping to have somebody joining us soon. I have to let them know we're live now. Okay. He's having problems with his computer. I'm just hoping. I'm hoping that things can work. Okay. Let's keep going there. All right. Let's start with the Quran, chapter 56, verse 27. And for now, I'm going to read the Motion Khan version, which is the second from the bottom, as you can see. And those on the right hand, who will be those on the right hand? They will be among thornless lote trees. And let's keep going. Among tall banana trees with fruits piled one above another. Now, I want to look, the reason I cited all these translations, so I want you to notice something. Banana trees, when they're talking about fruits piled one on another, again, if this is the desert mind, it's not something you would normally see. So thank you for joining me, Eric.
Hey, Paul, how are you?
So I'm just starting to read the translation. I don't know if I put these up because I think it's important that people see that this is what their concept of heaven is. I've got a few verses to show. It comes right from the Quran, and then I've got I put the piece into. I put the PowerPoint in if you wanted to review it into Skype if you wanted to take a look.
Okay.
If you wanted to run ahead. Okay. Again, this is the desert mind. Their idea of heaven has to do with fruit trees, because in deserts you don't find a lot of fruit. Okay. Notice they're not going to be talking about green grass. All right. Motion Khan is what I'm reading. In shade long extended. Shade, why? Because, again, in the desert, this limited mindset, it's too hot every place. So they need shade. Such a limited mind. By water flowing constantly. Again, this is for the desert-minded person. Water flowing constantly. So if you live any place else in the world where you live near water, again, this tells you this is the desert mind. It's the limited mindset of a person in the desert. And fruit in plenty. He had to keep mentioning that fruit because there's not enough fruit in any place in the desert. Whose season is not limited and their supply will not be cut off. Oh, again, the desert mindset, because you can only get food in certain times. And on couches or thrones raised high. Doesn't it sound like it's disjointed? 33 said, whose season is not limited and their supply will not be cut off. And all of a sudden, we're talking about couches and thrones. Sounds a little confusing. Well, it's the Quran. Verily, we have created them maidens of special creation. Oh, so who's on those thrones? Who's on those couches? These maidens of special creation. We're going to come back to that. Special creation. Keep that in mind. And made them virgins. Wait a minute. Are you born virgin, or do you have to be made virgin? It's something to think about. Motion Khan's translation. Loving their husbands only, equal in age. Okay, this is Quran 56:37. Keep that in mind. For those on the right hand. A multitude of those on the right hand will be from the first generation who embraced Islam. And a multitude of those on the right hand will be from the latter time generation. Now, that's the first part I have. We're going to come back, or we'll go back to that in a minute. I want to keep, this starts in chapter 55:60 as another, again, a reference to their concept of heaven. And I keep saying the desert mind. Their concept of heaven is limited to the desert mind. Motion Khan, is there any reward for good other than good? Then which of the blessing of your Lord will you both, jinns and men, deny? And besides these two, there are two other gardens, i.e., in paradise. Then which of the blessings of your Lord will you both, jinns and men, deny? Dark green in color. Now, does that sound like it makes sense? It doesn't have flow. That tells you that the person who wrote this he's not a great writer. You would think that if Allah's responsible for this, he would at least be able to make things flow. So you kind of, you look at the other translations here, and they say more. They say it's dark green pastures or something. But again, there's nothing in the Arabic that tells you it's anything but color. Motion Khan. The which of the blessings of your Lord will you both deny? In them will be two springs gushing forth water. The wind, which of the blessings will you both deny? In them will be fruits and date palms. Again, we're talking about fruit, things that the desert mind is limited to. Then which of the blessings will you both deny? He has to keep repeating himself. It's like a sing-song response. Therein, gardens will be fair wives, good and beautiful. Then which of the blessings will you both deny again? Again, repeating over and over again. Now, this is important. You need to get this term, Horus. Horus, Houris. And when you're done, when you're done listening, you're going to want to look this term up. I'm going to share the information I have on it, and it should make you think. Beautiful, fair females restrained in pavilions. Now, catch that term restrained. Let's go up and take a look at what Sahih International said. Fair ones reserved in pavilions. Pickthall said fair ones close guarded in pavilions. Okay, I don't see restrained there, but Yusuf Ali, companions restrained as to their glances. Again, you have to sit here and wonder, what are they talking about? Why are they restrained? Beautiful fair females, Horus. Motion Khan put beautiful fair females because in parentheses because it says Horus. Keep going. The which of the blessings will you both deny? He says, whom no man or jinn has opened their hymens. Again, we're talking about, okay, now we're getting into it, with sexual intercourse before them. Oh, so wait a minute. I thought they were virgins. I thought he created them as virgins, but he's opened their hymens with sexual intercourse. So Allah had sex? So if their God is having sex with this so they're getting second favor. They're not getting a real virgin. They're getting seconds. This is what these jihadis want. They're getting seconds. I didn't write it. This is in the Quran, people. I'm reading from Surah 55:74, as you can see. The which of the blessings of the Lord will you both deny? Reclining on green cushions and rich, beautiful mattresses. Okay. Going on to the next one. We're in Surah 44:51. Again, I'm going to be reading from Motion Khan. Verily, the Mutakan, pious, will be in a place of security, paradise, among gardens and springs, dressed in fine silk, also in thick silk, facing each other. Keep thinking about this. So it will be, and we shall marry them to Horus. We shall marry them. Who's the them? Dressed in fine silk and facing each other. Wait a minute. Are these women marrying women, or are there... Let's go back. Who's wearing the silk? The Mutakin. That would make them then, right? Dressed in fine silk and thick silk, facing each other. So it will be, we shall marry them to Horus. So you're going to have these men wearing silk, getting married to the Horus, the female fair ones with wide, lovely eyes. They will call therein for every kind of fruit and peace and security. They will never taste death therein except the first death of this world, and he will save them from the torment of the blazing fire. As a bounty from your Lord, that will be the supreme success. Arbery. As a bounty from your Lord, that will be the supreme success. So, where are the 72 virgins? Eric, did you hear anything in there about 72 virgins?
I didn't notice anything. It must be a hadith.
Oh, it is.
Oh, okay, well, there you go. It's probably Daif, though. I mean,
Oh no, actually, it's what's the second one? It's accepted. It's good. It's considered good. The Daif is not accepted.
right. Yeah.
Okay.
I
So
don't remember what you call it either. Sure.
So Bukhari, here we go with Bukhari. Bukhari, Volume 4, Book 54, number 476, narrated by Abu Huraira. The prophet said, the first batch of people who will enter paradise will be glittering like the full moon, and batch next to them will be glittering like the most brilliant star in the sky. Their hearts will be as if their heart of a single man, for they will have neither enmity nor jealousy among themselves. Everyone will have 2 wives from the horse. Did you hear 2? I mean, I didn't hear 72.
That's 70 short of what they were promised.
Yeah, so this is getting really interesting. So, who will be so beautiful, pure, and transparent that their marrow of their bones, of their legs, will be seen through? Okay, how is that beautiful? I mean, does that sound beautiful? Would you like to? I sorry, I don't want to be married to something like that. It just sounds alien, foreign, and disgusting to me.
Well, the idea for these huris, it actually comes from I think it's some type of Syriac folklore or Syriac literature that was circulated within the Catholic Church itself. And you find there was a book written a number of years ago. It's called The Mosque of Notre Dame. And in this book, it describes Paris as being taken over by Muslims, and Muslims are ruling the city, and the Notre Dame has been turned into a mosque. This is before it burned down. Okay, and the Huris are they're demons, is what they are, because when you try to satisfy your lusts, the first time, great, second time, all right, third time, okay, fourth, fifth, sixth, by the time you get to the 10th, 20th, or whatever time, and you're constantly made to do this, it wears you out. And that desire to engage in that all the time will stop. Now, this is why they're demons. They force the man to keep on performing until it becomes like a curse to him. So this is actually where Muhammad got his ideas for this. He had heard about these women, these in heaven, or it was probably hell where he heard it from, but he places them in heaven to satisfy all of your carnal desires. But in what's going to happen if you follow the rules of logic and what happens here on earth, it'll be a curse. So to say that they have bones that are transparent or translucent or whatever, it's sick is what it is. It really, it's following that idea is what it's doing.
So let's keep going. The hadiths. So we've got 2 wives now they're allowed, and they're marrying something not human. I mean, because I've yet to see a human that has that looks like that.
They have full breasts.
All right. So Muhammad reported, this is from Sahih Muslim, Book 40, Hadith number 6793. Muhammad reported that some persons stated with a sense of pride, and some discussed whether there would be more men in paradise or more women. It was upon this that Abu Huraira reported that Abu Qasim, the holy prophet, said the members of the first group to get into paradise would have their faces as bright as full moon during the night. And the next to this group would have their faces as bright as the shining stars in the sky. And every one of them every person would have 2 wives. So we're 70 short, aren't we, Eric? And the marrow of their shanks, that's their legs, would glimmer beneath the flesh. and there would be none without a wife in paradise. So you're going to see their bones. Kind of
Now,
gross to me.
okay, these women or these wives that they have, is this paradise for them? Where now instead of having
Well,
only four
remember,
of you to share, you're down to 2 to 1 instead of 4 to 1. Is that
so
paradise for them?
it gets another problem because we went back in the Quran. It said they were created for the people in heaven. So they aren't the actual. So these are not human people. These are specifically created for those people those jihadis that made it, or mujahideen, and yeah, mujahid, yeah. So it's specifically created for them according to the Quran. I mean, following their scriptures, it's got to make you think if they're not. Yeah. All right. So I found this in this comes from the book of Virtues on Jihad, and I can't. It's from Tamidi. Is that how you pronounce it, Eric? Or Tamidi? Chapter 25, narrated Al-Mikdam bin Madikarib. I have difficulties pronouncing things, so I'll give it a shot. That the messenger of Allah said, there are 6 things with Allah for the martyr. He is forgiven with the first flow of blood he suffers. He is shown his place in paradise. He is protected from punishment in the grave, secured from the greatest terror. The crown of dignity is placed upon his head, and its gems are better than the world and what is in it. He is married to 72 wives along Al-Huril, Ain of paradise, and he may intercede for 70 of his close relatives. Is he supposed to give them 70 of those wives? I mean, is that what those 70 women are for him to give away?
Well, no. 69, given the first flow of blood he suffers, he is shown in place in paradise. So just as soon as he's killed, or the first flow of blood, goes to paradise. Doesn't go to hell. Secured from the greatest terror, which would be hell, I guess. The crown of dignity is on his head, so he's getting crowns for getting there, and the gems on the crown are better than the world. He's married to 72 wives, and he may intercede for 72. Oh, okay, yeah, that's that.
Doesn't it sound like he has to give 70 wives away?
No, it doesn't. No, he is married to 72 wives,
and he may intercede for 70
of his close
relatives.
This is why you have shaheed, the mothers and the parents of the shaheeds are very proud of their children because they know that their son is going to allow them to come into heaven free pass.
So the women can only get there if their male relatives request them to come or intercede for them.
It guarantees them passage. It doesn't mean that they can't. If your son or whatever doesn't go out and kill himself, that doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to get into paradise, as far as I know, anyway. But what it does mean, though, is just as a shaheed, just as a martyr, is guaranteed to go to paradise by dying in jihad. He is also given 72 virgins, and he is able to vouch for or allow 70 people of his choosing to come into paradise with him. So this is why you see mothers on these TV. I'm so proud of my son, and I'm so happy for him. No, you're not, lady. According to your beliefs, you're happy because now you're going to be guaranteed to go to paradise.
And this is this hadith, because I looked this up, and I saw some comments on Muslim sites that said, well, this is not reliable. But if you look at it, it says Hasan Sahih, which means it's good. And Sahih and Hasan are the 2 accepted levels of hadiths. If you go,
and Tirmidhi is one of the 6 compilers that are trusted. The majority of their hadith are trusted to be Sahih.
Yeah, I looked it up. I wanted to make sure because again, I want to know what the 72 virgins came from because it's not in the Quran. Only Quran says you only get 2. This is why the Quran is never enough for Islam, followers of Islam. And that's, I mean, the other day I was on a show uh, with Rad, and I was just trying to get this one guy to say the Quran is not enough, and he wouldn't say that. That was, I found fascinating.
Well, there's a lot of things that they won't admit, because if they
Yeah.
do, then it gets them in trouble.
Yep. All right. So here's where I went to Wiki Islam, and this is where I found this. It says Huri, the heavenly virgin. Heavenly virgins are a variety of celestial being. Again, so they're not human, according to Islamic scriptures. Serve as a key attraction of heaven, or Jannah. Huris are mentioned in Quranic texts as a reward for believing men in the afterlife. So the women get nothing. They get no sexual pleasure.
Well, how can they? They probably had gone through female genital mutilation, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, and that's another thing. There's no chance. That's a good point. So you have to sit there. What do they get? They get to be servants. You have to have a lot of questions, because they never describe anything that women get. So what is heaven for them? No one will ever know, because it's not in Islamic scripture. According to the Quran, one in Jannah believers are wed to virgin Huris who have full-grown, swelling, or pears-shaped breasts. The Quran provides a physical and personal description of Huri and denotes them as awards to believers. A hadith graded Sahih details the number of Huris that will be awarded to martyrs. That's the 72 virgins. Orthodox Muslim theologians such as Ghazali has discussed the Huris as being rewards and pleasures found in heaven. Al-Ghazali, in particular, refers to a hadith described heaven as a slave market where there will be no buy and sale. But if any man wishes to have sexual intercourse with a woman, he will do it at once. The same hadith is quoted by Ibn Kathir in his Quranic commentary, the Tasfir Ibn Kathir. The Huris are also described graphically by Quranic commentator, polymath, al-Suyuti, who died in 1505, who, echoing Sahih Hadith from Ibn Majah, wrote that the perpetual virgins will all have appetizing vaginas, and the penis of the elected never softens. The erection is eternal. So their entire concept of heaven has to do with sexual gratification. And this is, as I read earlier in the show, and this is what I'm just going to go back to that. Let me see if I can easily go back. Sorry, we'll go back to that.
Well, if you think about this, the purpose of sex, what God created for, was for procreation. And God created it for mankind to be pleasurable, to be a bond between a man and a woman. And just like everything Satan does, he's perverted what God created into this. This is a perversion of the purpose of sex.
So what I want to do is look here again. This is what I credit Ronnie Berggren, who's a great Swede, patriotic Swede, and he writes he's talking about how Byzantium, Emperor of Byzantium, Leo III, got in a discussion with the rulers of Muslims and wrote about paradise. He said, "But you who live for your urges see no purpose in paradise without these women." That they have to describe their erection I
don't know. Maybe this is a fantasy of an old man where he just, they didn't have Viagra at the time, and this is just something that he just dreamed up, or he heard and he goes, "Boy, wouldn't that be nice?" And to get, encourage my fighters to keep fighting, or especially the older ones who, are getting up there in the age. The whole premise behind it, as far as with the perpetual sexual gratification, the perpetual virginity of these demon-like creatures, is again a perversion of what God created in perfect order for us here on earth. Not for us in heaven, but for here on earth. It's sick.
It is. And again, I wanted to pull this one up. It's nasty. I apologize for any children watching. I don't intend you for this. If you have children, please don't let them pay attention to this. Close their ears. Each time, this is from Al Itqan fi al Quran, page 351. He wrote, each time we sleep with a houri, we find her virgin. Besides, the penis of the elected never softens. The erection is eternal. The sensation that you feel each time you make love is utterly delicious and out of this world, and were you to experience it in this world, you would faint. Each chosen one, Muslim, will marry 70 houris. Oh, what happened to the two? Besides the women he married on earth, and all will have... Again, there is such a fascination with sex.
It's an obsession. This is why it's easy. It's easy to clinically analyze or psychoanalyze. I'm sorry. It's easy to clinically psychoanalyze Muhammad based on things like this and what he's described as doing in the Hadith. Having sex with all your wives in one evening and not taking a bath, that's a sexual pervert. That's a pervert. That's a sex addict right there. And all of the other perversions that he is described as having make him a sex addict, somebody that has no concept of what normalcy would be when it comes to sex. I mean, when you're having sex with 10, 11 women in one evening, there's something wrong with you. When you're having sex, you're 54 and you're having sex with a 9-year-old girl, there's something wrong with you. When you are attracted to the wife of your son, even if it's an adopted son, I don't care. When you're attracted to the wife of your adopted son, there's something wrong with you. If you think people are going to believe you, that you get a revelation that it's okay to have sex in the bed of one of your wives with a slave girl, there's something wrong with you. So to psychoanalyze Muhammad as a pervert, as a sex addict, it's easily done. So that would subsequently lead to his sayings, his hadith. I don't believe the hadith as far as I can throw them, but to lead to these things, it just makes perfectly good sense that the perversions that he supposedly enjoyed during his life are also going to be found in the afterlife.
Well, one of the things I think that is extremely, extremely concerning, again, these Muslims, the followers of Islam, I'm just going to put it that way. I don't necessarily like the term Muslim much because I think we have to strictly look at the followers of Islam. This is their faith structure. This is what they choose to follow and to identify with. And one of the things that really gets me with this is they think that Muhammad is so important, so perfect, that they had to copy him in every way. Now, this even means, believe it or not, going to the bathroom in the same way that he did. And if you think I'm wrong, go look up. It's squatting toilets, and you'll find them even on YouTube. How to install a squatting toilet. Again, it's not something I've made up. They have to copy him in every way. Even how he went to the bathroom is described. Now, this guy who's made perversion the goal, if the end, not just the means to get people involved in war, that's their prize when they get done, when they get killed on their way. That's their ultimate. They get a prize of sex for the rest of their lives and an eternal hard-on. I mean, that's their concept of heaven. To me, I consider this very minute. This concept of heaven is very small, puny. It only has one concept. It doesn't have the concept of pleasure beyond sex. And for those of us who are older or who have, there are many pleasures in life. You should know that. But their God is so limited in his perspective.
In what he can reward people with in a heaven.
Yes.
He can't, in this religion, he cannot reward you any more than having wine and resting in the shade, things that we can take pleasure
Having
in
some
here.
fruit.
Having some fruits, having some fresh water, sitting in the cool shade on cushions, and perpetually engaged in sexual activity. The God of Islam is a one-minded. What do they call that? One-track-minded
One track
individual.
mind. Yeah,
Yeah.
whatever sets your sexual pleasure up.
Right, and it's the physical pleasure, and that's the thing. Are we to have physical bodies in heaven? Does it describe us as having physical bodies or spiritual bodies? I mean, when you, and if you're in heaven, how can you satisfy the flesh in heaven? And that's it's I don't know.
That's another great question.
Yeah.
I mean, that's again, this is it's a whole other discussion that it should be asked of every jihadi who's planning on things. I mean, this is what I think they do not. They don't dare to ask when they do these deprogramming things because they're afraid to tell the truth. They're afraid to hurt their feelings. So I put this slide up because I mentioned this in my book, What Social Studies Teachers Need to Know About Islam. What I found in this, there was a battle. It basically, I think it's called the Battle of Badr, but this is the first battle where they win. And I'm just going to read this. And again, why am I mentioning it? Because the man I'm going to be reading about goes to this Islamic concept of heaven. So the battle started with arrows finding a former Muslim slave who had been freed by Umar. Another of the arrows struck a Muslim drinking from the cistern, piercing his throat. This seemed to distress the raiders. The raiders are who? They are the followers of Muhammad. Ibn Ishaq records that Muhammad walked out and proclaimed, "By Allah," he says, "in whose hand is the soul of Muhammad, no man will be slain in this day, fighting against them with the steadfast and courage, advancing, not retreating, but God will cause them to enter paradise." So if you lead this really quick, no man will die. Then he says, but God will cause them to enter paradise. Okay, so maybe some of you will die. So it's kind of a contradictory promise. This was now a jihad, a holy war for the cause of Allah and his prophet. One of Muhammad's boldest warriors, Auf Biharith, asked, "O apostle of Allah, what makes the Lord laugh with joy at his servant?" Muhammad looked at him and answered, "When he plunges into the midst of the enemy without chainmail." Auf Biharith took off his coat of mail, grabbed his sword, and flew into the enemy with a fury until he was killed. So he wanted his 72 virgins now. And
they actually have videotaped people that were fighting for ISIS who they're in a firefight and they're saying, look, if you go out there and you're killed, you're going to immediately paradise and you're going to have your 72 virgins. And these guys get out there and they start fighting like Rambo, for crying out loud, shooting from the hip, and then all of a sudden you see, the return fire coming in and it kills them, and then they haul them off. And the reason why he went out there to do that is because of this a hadith. Well, this isn't even a hadith. This is from the Sirah of Muhammad. Because of something like this. Because if you go out there and you fight boldly and you go right into the heart of the enemy, look what's going to happen to you. You're going straight to paradise.
And
that's what they're doing. I mean, this is how they fool the weak-minded.
And this is why I started this section off talking about some of the news of the week. This is why we have jihadis. This is why Islam, you cannot trust your neighbor if they have these beliefs. And I say that, well, if your neighbor has a belief that of Islam, if he's idolizes Muhammad and wants to copy him in every way. Muhammad, again, married a 6-year-old and bedded her at the age of 9. If you ask your neighbor who follows Islam, and that you ask them point blank, do you think everybody should consider Muhammad the perfect man? And he will probably say yes. So do you think Nick's question. I've done this. Okay, I've asked Muslims this question just this way, and I always get a yes. Muhammad was the perfect man. And I say, should we copy him? I mean, are you trying to copy him? And at least that person always admits, yes, I'm trying to copy him. So and then I'll ask them, do you have a daughter? And those who say yes, I says, okay. So how do you feel about your daughter being married off at the age of 6 and bedded at the age of 9? I could hear crickets normally. They don't like, what are you talking about? Like, oh.
Now
so you're telling me that if I have a 6-year-old daughter that you might be interested in her? Are you telling me that? Because you're telling your children to emulate this prophet? I mean, I have serious concerns. It's not hatred that I'm giving. This is awareness. This has to do with awareness. I'm quoting their sources, not mine. If you look here, it comes from my book, but I'm giving credit to Ibn Ishaq's Sirah al-Rasul. You can find this on page 300. Thank you, Eric. Yeah, you can pick this up, The Life of Muhammad. It costs about $35, if I remember right. Is that about right? Yeah,
I'm muted. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm fact checking you. Page 300.
I think it was page 300.
Okay. Oh wait, no. Page 32. What's that mean? Page 32.
That's from my book.
That's from your book. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, my book is really thin. You don't need to.
Yeah.
This book is like 500 pages.
Okay.
The Sirah al-Rasul.
All right, so it says the first Muslim fell was Mijay, the free man from Uman, was shot by an arrow. Then while Haritha was drinking by the cistern, an arrow pierced his throat and killed him. Then the apostle went forth. Is that about right? What it says there?
Yep. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's right in the book, guys. It doesn't like he's making it up.
So, if this is their God, now my questions are this: can Islam survive without a belief in eternal sexual pleasure for men? It's a male-run belief structure. It's a male award only, and the women only get awarded if the men are agreeable to them. Am I correct here? From what I mean, the women don't get in, even if they blow themselves up, from what I understand, because there's no promise to women.
I'm not exactly sure what the teaching on that is as far as what is promised women in paradise, but I can pretty much guarantee you that any woman would not want 72 men when she got to paradise.
Well, there was no promise of them getting 72 virgin men.
I don't know. The point is that you're absolutely right. There is no guarantees to the women in Islam. It's only the men who fight in jihad.
Again, very, like you're saying, very limited perspective of heaven. It's an important discussion.
It's exactly what you would find. It's exactly what you would expect with the false prophet too. This is exactly what you would expect.
So again, why should she believe? This is my question. Okay, if the Houris, the 72 virgins, are as described, they're not human. Okay, it says that in the Quran. They are not human. They are created. They are created for those who die in jihad. That's it. Go ahead, Eric. I'm sorry.
No, I'm sneezing. I'm
okay.
I have a cold. But to answer your first question, can Islam survive without the belief in eternal sexual pleasure for men? And to be honest with you, when we talk about the rapid expansion of Islam, it's not done through the diffusion of trade. It's not done through proselytization. It's done through what? It's done through kinetic fighting, forceful fighting. And you have to have a motivation for people to fight. And if that motivation of perpetual houris, perpetual virgins, having perpetual erections in a heaven that has, rivers of wine and all these other things that satisfy the flesh, you're not going to get jihadi warriors to fight for you. Therefore, you are not going to expand Islam, and therefore Islam will regress and eventually die out. So I would say no, using
You
that
know,
logic.
I've actually had a discussion today with a friend from Canada, and he was talking to me about how this war in the fall of Constantinople, the reason for the fall was just like you were describing. The jihadis, the mujahid, would come out and they would recklessly fight, and one would replace the other. And the the truth was, these great crusaders, they were slaying so many. They were tired from slaying them. That's what happened. They were overwhelmed by forces. Each one of those Christian crusaders trained to fight was slaying so many. They just became exhausted, and this is part of the reason for this, is this sexual motivation that they will run into.
And you think you're going to fight very hard if as soon as I get killed, I'm gonna be with 72 virgins, and I'm gonna spend eternity gratifying my flesh. Are you really going to fight that hard, or are you going to just don't make it hurt that bad? And you
doesn't that sound like this is the justification for a suicide bomber. Let's get it over quickly.
Exactly. Yeah, you're right, because it doesn't get any better. Too bad these guys didn't know about suicide bombing, because they'd probably be doing that.
Yeah. So again, I want you to think again, the Islamic concept of heaven. Do those following Islam actually want to have sex with women whom they can see their bones?
I don't even know what to say about that.
That's what I've left there. It's a question. We'll leave it there. How about this one? The implications of virgins here is stated that in the Quran that they are the same age as the men who earned their way to Jannah or Islamic paradise, but their virginity portrays them as prepubescent. Do you want a devout follower of Islam living next door to you with this concept of paradise as you raise your daughters?
I'm going to put on a list is what I want.
Yeah.
Okay. Same age as men.
Yeah, it says that they will be the same age, but they're making them they're talking about their virginity. And again, in Islamic culture, these would be the concept of virgins would be prepubescent. Okay, because they get married off and have sex with at the age of 9.
Right.
So when they're talking about this is the essence that they're killing. So you might die at 50. You might get a girl who's 50 years old, but this virgin, you have to sit there and ask some questions. What are they really thinking about? Because yeah, and this is a scary thought. It sounds perverted. I'm sorry, but this is the Islamic concept of heaven. And again, it's something to think about if you have a neighbor like this. You might be protecting them, and if you make your daughters are aware that this could be, let's be careful here. I'm not being hateful. I'm being honest, and I'm reading their scriptures. So again, it should cause you to have reason to think.
Sure.
One of the last ones I have here is Muhammad or Allah confused about how many virgins his martyrs get. So, we read in the Quran that the martyrs only get 2. My question is, if the martyrs only get 2, why do the hadiths say differently? That's, I think, a very, very important question. What's happening that the martyrs? Again, if the Quran says 2, are the 72 that they get? Are they supposed to give those? That's why I was saying, are they supposed to give those 70 away to the people they invite in? Is that their reasoning for that? That's the question I'm asking. Not an Islamic scholar, but it makes me wonder if that's the purpose of those 70. is to give those 70 away, and that would make the people they're inviting male. So no woman could get there. And this would be something to consider. It's all on them. So again, it's something to consider. Now, I've been working on this for quite a while, just thinking about this, and I say that is since things have been going on, I wanted to share. Okay, here we go. Stop sharing. I wanted to share what's going on. This local important news. Why? Because some things are just important to share. I found this stuff as I read more and more about Islam. I keep running into the why. Why is it so important to do these things? Why is it so important to be jihadis? Why is it so important to do these things? And it comes down to, if you're going to follow Islam, if you're going to be a devout follower, you're willing to idolize jihad. You're willing to, again, the funny thing about idolizing Muhammad only engaged in a few battles. So you're going to idolize Muhammad, maybe you don't want to engage in very many battles so you can live a little bit longer. But again, he actually gives, he says nasty stuff to those who don't partake. So he does, and there's no love for the non-Muslim. There is nothing there that provides any love for the non-Muslim. So this week, another topic kind of off there. I had written a book a few years back in 2015 on the civilization jihad and the myth of modern Islam, and I got cited in a quote academic journal, and I'm laughing about it. There's a reason I'm laughing about it. So I'm just gonna pull this up real quick and see if I can share it. Let's see. Share screen, and I'm just gonna put this over here. Just a second. I gotta move something. All right, there we go. All right, so here we go. And the joy of sharing screens, getting it all done. So I don't know if you can, can you see this? The role of the mosque and the implementation of wasitaya, concept of Islam, understanding and socialization. Modern Islam. What is modern Islam? Modern Islam, we are told, has to do with not being violent. And, I read this entire document. It's put out the university in Jakarta, in Indonesia. And there's no definition of moderate. Yet, my book, this is where I found stuff, kind of humorous. My book is cited. And, I asked why are they citing me? Why are they citing me? Well, and here it is. All right. For those of you who don't, why did they cite me? Well, because I call it moderate. Now, I've written a letter to them, these authors, saying, look, if you can't define moderate Islam, we have a problem. If you want to define modern Islam, you have to, in the United States, thank you, Eric. In the United States, moderate is, you have to define your terms. Hey, Eric, when you did when you were working on your master's for education, how important was it when you wrote a paper to define your terms? How important was defining your terms?
Well, it was everything. When you write academically, you have to be, when we talk about being concise, you have to be more than concise, because if there is any ambiguity in what you're writing, the professor is going to tear it up. So when you write an academic paper, you have to be concise.
So this is what I wrote to them. I told them point blank, you have to. I don't consider what you did as professional. I don't consider what you did academic. I said in the United States, your paper would not qualify to be placed in a journal. It sounds
What
sad
journal
and
was this
nasty.
placed in? What journal? Where was this paper published? And
And
who?
that's what it's in Indonesia.
Okay.
Okay, let me get back
Okay.
here.
Well, I'm sure the peer review process, but
Yeah.
publishing papers that are
It's out of the
against,
University of Muhammad Jakarta. I can't pronounce it. Muhammadiyah
was that
Jakarta.
Jakarta?
Jakarta.
University Muhammad the Jakarta.
Hmm.
Right, and you're okay. That should say enough right there.
So here's my response. Today I discovered your article, The Role of the Mosque and the Implementation of the Wasitaya Concept in Islam, and blah, blah, blah. I said, as I am listed as a reference, I found it surprising my work was listed as a reference, yet no mention of my work is given in your article. In fact, your work backs my claims that there exists no moderate Islam. I found your definition of moderate Islam lacking. In fact, what is most disturbing about your article is that no definition of moderate Islam is given, only an illusion that it exists, but you provide no definitive way to measure what you call moderate Islam. You speak of wasitaya or moderate way, but provide no Quran citations or hadiths to back your claim that Muhammad believed in a moderate way. In the USA, this article would not be considered scholarly because you make a statement of existence for moderate Islam, but provide no definitive measure. Okay, that right there, you would not qualify. Your paper could not only not be published, it could not be considered academic, is what I'm saying. I mean, I studied for a PhD. I wrote a lot of scholarly papers. I don't have it. I may go back and do it yet. My last articles I wrote had to do with intelligence analysis. It was a graduate certificate I was doing. All these papers had required definitions of terms, and you usually put that at the beginning of your paper so people understand what you're writing about. Here's the thing I said. I ask you, was Muhammad teaching wasitaya or moderate way when he gave Surah 489, which approved of killing those who leave Islam? Sahih Bukhari 52:260 consider this violence or murder acceptable and normal. So is this what you are claiming is a wasitaya or moderate way? Was Muhammad teaching wasitaya or moderate way when he wrote of Allah's hatred against those who are not followers of Islam? Muhammad is the messenger of Allah, and those who are with him are strong against unbelievers, but compassionate amongst each other. That is Quran 48:29. O prophet, strive hard against the unbelievers, and hypocrites can be firm against them. I can go on here. This is just, what I did was I said, when I finally finished, with their citations, I wrote, as a scholar, I can see you are struggling with this claim of moderate Islam as it doesn't exist. You can't even define it out of fear that you may be labeled an apostate and then be killed. I'll offer you this. There is a God who loves you. His love knows no bounds. He is willing to knock down any wall you put up to show you his love. In your Quran, you call Jesus Isa. This is evidence that the Quran has errors, since the accurate translation works out to be Esau. But even in the Quran, it claims miracles done by Christ. Muhammad was asked to do miracles repeatedly by people who thought he was possessed of a demon. Muhammad never proved their thoughts wrong. He just kept proclaiming he was the messenger of Allah. He claimed to be a prophet spoken of by the Torah, but he had Jews killed for not violating the Sabbath. And that alone proves that Muhammad's Allah had no knowledge of what was written in the Torah. So you would think if he's a prophet, he would be able to at least do that. And that's what it comes down to. And, this is the truth. I mean, it comes down to, if you can't, your God doesn't love you enough, and you're afraid to tell the truth. In Deuteronomy 6:4, it says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. Shema Yisrael, Adonai, Eloheinu, Adonai." Echad and Adonai. This word one here is Echad. The word is only ever used to mean united one. Just as members of of a team are considered one team. The three persons spoken of in Christianity are one God, not three. Jesus, being God, came to earth for the purpose of bearing in the price for my sin and yours. He did this because he first loved us. He did this for us while we were yet in sin. He loves those who did not know him, just as he loves those who do know him. So much different than their Allah. Do you know what you have to do to go to hell? Nothing. Do you know what you have to do to go to heaven? Believe. No works required. No doing this or that. All you have to do is believe. And Jesus died for your sins and rose from the dead. The reason there's no works required, because God works on you from within. He changes you from within. That's all on God, not on you. Do you agree with those things, Eric?
Of course, yeah. If you were focused on works, you would focus on the works. You wouldn't focus on the Lord. You would focus on what you can do yourself in order to be justified before God. And there's no justification. There's nothing. I mean, Paul even tells us that, all of our works are as filthy rags. There's nothing that we can do. And this is the exact opposite of what Christ taught in the true Gospels. The Gospels that are mentioned again right here in the Sierra of Muhammad. Muhammad even mentioned, or even Ishaq even mentions the Gospels, and it's not some Injil, it's not some fake book that was made up in order to cover the tracks of Muhammad when they figured out that the Quran contradicts what is found in the true Gospel of Jesus Christ. So yes, that paper that you were citing, I'm assuming that when you publish a paper at a university, there are people that review it, correct?
You would think so.
You would think, right. You would think that there's a peer review process where people would look at it. People would look at, okay, so what are these citations? And then if somebody pulls up, one of the citations and says, okay, well, this book right here is being cited as a source to demonstrate my point, I would think just the most...
It tells you about their scholarly process, doesn't
exactly. It? That's exactly what tells it, that the scholarship that is being done there is not serious. Is not serious scholarship. Number one, and that's the important thing. One of the things that I always ask people when you engage Muslims about the core differences between our religions. I mean, death, deity, resurrection. Death, the crucifixion on the cross. The crucifixion on the cross, the most demonstrable event from antiquity. Not because of what the Bible says, but because all of the extra biblical evidence that accompanies that. Once you confront them with that reality, you ask them, okay, tell me, if you're using a purely academic approach to the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, and if you're using a truly academic approach to demonstrate that he either was or was not crucified, which one has the weight of evidence using an academic approach, using the historical method to demonstrate its veracity? And of course they're going to say, of course they have to, anybody with any ounce of integrity in their bones would say that Jesus was crucified. So when you encounter people in an academic setting, and this is where these papers are published in academic settings, show me one paper, just one paper, one peer-reviewed paper in a reputable theological journal. Obviously, this university is not reputable. They've demonstrated that.
Yes. Just
one article in a peer-reviewed journal that asserts that Jesus Christ was not crucified, and they know that anybody that would submit such a paper like that would be thrown out of academia. You cannot get away with that type of crap when people, using the peer-reviewed process, using the historical method, evaluate that data and the absence of that data in this case. So when we look at these guys that cited you,
mm-hmm. It's
not
scary.
So much.
It's scary. I'm going to pretty much end the topic here, and what I want to do is go on and get into a few other pieces of news, because it's unfortunate that there is so much out there. But when I think it's important to, when we talk about academic quality, academic scholarship, you have to understand. I have, and Eric has, a large number of what are considered scholarly Islamic books and Islamic. I take journal articles and I keep them for reasons. But in
Okay,
truth, they
Paul.
don't
Paul,
pass the muster.
can I
Yeah,
show you one that is not a scholarly book? Can I
sure.
just hold this up for you?
Yeah.
This is not a scholarly book. This right here. This book is what we call a joke. Just in case somebody might be watching the Global Patriot Radio Network again tonight. This is a joke. This is not scholarship.
Oh my God. Yeah. Um, scholarly articles, scholarly books do citations. Every book that I have is footnoted, and I have argued with publishers to the point where I'm willing to self-publish if I must, because the truth is, I like footnotes because I can find what I'm looking for immediately. I hate endnotes. I hate them. I hate them with a passion. I'm sorry, I do. But we have to be as Christians, we have to be the best we can be. And academically, that means a lot. And when we're talking about scholarships, it means a lot. So when you're out there and you're doing your best, which is what Christ asked of us, nothing more. He just asked us to do our best. If someone's better than you, that's fine because you're doing your best. He doesn't ask more. That's the cool thing. That's what we're getting into. I want to get into. I've got to switch gears here for a second. I wanted to share a few things, and I'm going to get into. I want to cover some awful things that's happened with COVID before I go into things. Here's the stuff I want to share about what's happening this week with news, and I don't share stuff about COVID that I don't read that don't come from reliable sources. Dr. Let me get his name now. Dr. Peter McCullough, who is a cardiologist, an academic physician who teaches he's a teacher of a medical in a medical profession. Professor. Thousands of serious adverse events, he writes, reported following COVID-19 vaccination in children. A study by U.S. researchers found that healthy boys may have greater likelihood of being admitted to the hospital with heart inflammation caused by the currently available COVID-19 vaccines with coronavirus itself. In particular, they found that boys between the ages of 12 and 15 without underlying health conditions were 4 to 6 times more likely to develop vaccine-related myocarditis and to end up in the hospital with COVID during a 4-month period. Most children who experience this side effect are getting it within days of their second dose of the Pfizer and Moderna jabs. 86% of the boys affected needed hospital care. An analysis of reports from the Vaccine Adverse Events Reporting System in the United States by Children's Health Defense found that there were more than 17,000 adverse events among 12 to 17-year-olds linked to COVID vaccines, including 1,018 serious events and 18 deaths in data published August 13. So this is months ago, and that's when they just started to approve things. That's the very month they started to approve things. They include a 15-year-old boy who had been vaccinated despite previously having COVID-19. He was diagnosed with cardiomyopathy and died 4 days after getting his second dose of Pfizer. 13-year-old girl, meanwhile, died after experiencing a heart condition following her first dose of Pfizer vaccine. Several other teens died within days of receiving COVID-19 vaccine. And there were 432 reports of myocarditis and 86 reports of blood clotting disorders in this age group. While some of them may be coincidental, the overall pattern is very alarming and something that all parents need to keep in mind when deciding if their children should get vaccinated with these for COVID-19. He did write one other piece, which I'll share, and this has to do with the UK and children again. It's titled Excess Mortality in UK Children Observed After Vaccine Rollout. The shots appear to be causing children to die. Deaths among children have risen in the UK since they began vaccinating teenagers aged 12 and older against COVID-19. And while vaccine defenders will likely insist it's coincidence, parents have a right to know what is happening so they can draw their own conclusions. The UK National Health Service, NHS, rolled out the coronavirus vaccine for people aged 12 to 15 on September 20th, and nearly 3 million children received their first dose of Pfizer vaccine shortly thereafter. The vaccine rollout began on the 30th week of the year. A look at data from the UK's Office of National Statistics indicates that the number of deaths in children aged 10 to 14 weeks, between weeks 38 and 41 of the year, were 62% greater than the 5-year average of deaths in the same age group during the same period of time. In addition, the rise began just as children started getting the jab. Rare Foundation USA also notes that during the 43rd week of this year, more children aged 5 to 14 died than usual, and the UK Health Security Agency reported the number of children who died at the end of October this year was so great that it was considered excess mortality. The vaccination campaign began despite the UK's Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunization stating that in the past they did not support the universal vaccination of children. The reason given for moving forward was the belief that it might help prevent outbreaks in the classrooms and further disruption to education this winter. That 62% increase against the 5-year average and up to 400% vulnerable children accounts for the fact that a 37-page fact sheet was published by Pfizer on the safety of its vaccine. Notes that 79% of vaccinated children aged older than 12 can expect side effects. Are you catching this? They're not. This my big issue here is they're not doing what I call, they're not giving informed consent. And I keep talking about that. They're just not doing informed consent. And that, to me, is one of the biggest things that I have an issue with. I wanted to talk about an article Robert Spencer did this week, and it was on Jihad Watch, and this one takes the cake. Hello, 321, and repent. Thank you for joining us. This one takes the cake because we're talking about the Holocaust Museum removing a photo of a Mufti of Jerusalem with Hitler. Now, here's my biggest problem with this. As a social studies teacher, I shared this picture with my students. There were Muslim students in there who said, that's not true. That's not accurate. And I said, I got it from this source, and yes, it is accurate, and you can check it yourself. So what happens when they remove them from places like this? And this is where I think Robert Spencer's article is important. So I'm going to read his article. I think it's incredibly important. This you can find. Actually, this is not his article. It is from Shalom Pollack and Aretz Shiva, which came out November 27th. He writes, I would like to introduce a notorious Nazi SS general, a leading Muslim cleric, and the father of a nation all in one. This person is the Hajj Amin al-Husseini. Husseini was the powerful patriarch leading Arab clan in Palestine in the first half of the 20th century. He used his political power and religious influence for his life's motive, the murder of Jews. In an attempt to mainstream the Mufti of Jerusalem, the British appointed him to an official position of power and responsibility. It did not work. It only gave him the platform and prestige to pursue his passion of killing Jews. This he accomplished in numerous occasions, most notably by instigating the barbaric Hebron massacre of dozens of Jewish families in 1929. Note, in 1929, there was no Zionist apartheid occupation, no occupied territories, no settlers, just Jews of all ages living in Hebron and horribly killed by their neighbors. Nazi sympathizer, he fled British-controlled Palestine during the war. He led a Nazi coup in Iraq, where he instigated the bloody Farhud pogrom against the Jewish community of Iraq. He then fled to Germany, where he made an honorary SS general by Himmler. He was made an honorary SS general by Himmler. and proceeded to do all he could in helping Hitler's regime kill Jews. He addressed the Arab world by radio from Berlin, winning huge support for the Nazis. He raised divisions of Muslims that fought in the Nazi army. One of their tasks was to guard so that the Jews do not escape the trains to death camps. Husseini intervened in a deal that would have saved a trainload of Jewish children for a bribe. Husseini would not allow one Jewish child to escape the gas chambers. Together with Himmler, he visited the death camps and drew plans to build a facility in the Dotan Valley in Samaria, where the 500,000 Jews of Palestine would be gassed as soon as Rommel defeated the British. Eichmann was quoted as saying, "I am a personal friend of Grand Mufti. We have promised that no European Jew would enter Palestine anymore." After the war, SS General Husseini found refuge in Syria from war crimes judgment. Wherever he appeared in the Arab world, he was received as a hero and a mentor. His Nazi credentials, together with his clerical position, were the calling card that opened every door in the Arab world. Yasser Arafat called him the father of Palestine, of the Palestinian people. PA Authority President Abbas repeated this accolade. Yad Vashem, the world's foremost Holocaust museum, the memorial had a large photo of Husseini with Hitler on one wall. Opposite was a photo of Jewish soldiers from Palestine volunteering in the British Army in the Jewish Brigade. The contrast was clear. I say had because when Yad Vashem was refurbished and expanded in 2005, the Hitler-Husseini photo did not make it into the new museum. The tour guide since 1980, he writes, "I have visited the old museum numerous times and remember clearly how my tourists were shocked by the duo in the photo. In the new museum, instead of the Husseini Hitler photo, there is a far smaller one of Husseini and Himmler in a dark corner that no one sees. I finally located it. When I wrote to Yad Vashem and asked why they removed the photo from the new museum, I was told that the new museum concentrates on the victims, less on the perpetrators. However, just a few feet from small Husseini Himmler photo is an entire wall of perpetrators, the architects of the Wannsee Conference that drew up plans for the Holocaust. I asked a number of local officials, Yad Vashem guides, about the photo. They either did not know of it or said it was political and they didn't discuss it with visitors. They are uncomfortable with his inquiry. And the author writes, I wondered if associating Palestinian Arabs with Nazi was no longer politically correct, since the Oslo Accords with Arafat in 1993. Some of these things are sad. This week in Belgium, let me pull up this next one.
Can I comment on that, Paul?
Yes, please do.
Okay, so there's a couple things that people need to recognize here with this article. Number one, this is al-Husseini. He's the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem. He's in a position of power. He is in a position of power in the Holy Land, which is they call Palestine, but this is in Israel, okay? He's meeting with Hitler, trying to prevent people from coming to Palestine, their homeland, to where they would have some type of refuge to be shielded from Hitler. This is the guy that did that. Now, you mentioned Arafat. What did you say about Yasser Arafat here?
He called him, I believe he called, I have it just a second. Get back. That's the joy of using two screens. I'm
put you on the spot.
Trying to get back.
But Arafat, his mentor was al-Husseini. This is the guy that mentored Yasser Arafat. You know, the guy that's responsible for the majority of the early terrorist activity.
Arafat called Husseini the father of the Palestinian people.
So this is his but he was the mentor of Yasser Arafat. And the last thing that you mentioned there, and this is what really hits home. Okay, so they say that they don't want to focus on the perpetrators, they want to focus on the victims. And that's great. Of course, you want to give the victims a voice, but the victims against a voice against what? Because the sole purpose of the Holocaust Museum here in the United States, Yad Vashem, and other Holocaust museums that exist across the world, is to educate people against the dangers of what perpetrators do. So if you don't educate people on who the perpetrators are, these perpetrators are given a pass, and anybody can, step up and start perpetrating, because, well, we don't know who they, how to identify what a perpetrator looks like. A perpetrator looks a lot like this Al Husseini guy, and for the museum to take this thing down is, it's unconscionable, is what it is.
It's abhorrent. It really disgusts me as an educator, retired now, but as a historian, it severely when museums start to remove things because they all of a sudden consider them controversial or they're afraid to talk about it. I think we need to talk about it more. I mean,
the cure for the restrictions on free speech is more free speech. You're exactly right. This would be the equivalent of saying, well, we don't want to include Hitler's picture in any of the displays here at the Holocaust Museum. Really? He's the guy that did this. This guy had a trainload of Jewish children, kittens, killed. When you want to start characterizing people or putting pictures of pure evil up on the screen, this is the guy. This is one of those guys that you illuminate, and then what you also do, and this is what they're afraid of, is illuminating the ideology that motivated this guy. If you start associating, okay, Al Husseini, this is who was he? Well, he was the Grand Mufti, the Muslim Mufti of Jerusalem. When you start associating the ideology with it, this is what they're afraid of. And I don't know who this guy is who's the curator of the museum, but I could almost guarantee you he's secular. He would be probably one of these libtards from one of those universities that they have in Israel today.
One of the things I talked about last week with Norman Cantor was the accusation that Israel is an apartheid state, and we kind of laughed at that because there are parliamentarians in Israel, or Knesset. They're in the Knesset. It's not parliament. In the Knesset, there are politicians in the Knesset who are followers of Islam. And that doesn't happen in an apartheid state.
Right. I mean,
so,
yeah.
I don't know
representatives of people that were repressing in our own Knesset, right?
Yeah. So this is, I mean, the liberalism, the foolishness, this stuff happens. And I do know in many social studies class, it's many states, I'll say states, still have a thing there that encourages the teaching that Israel is an apartheid state. So I bring it up, and there's just no excuse. I want to get into my next article here. This is on the insanity of Belgium. And I want you to think about this one. Eric, I'm sure you'll comment from a person with military background, but I want you to think about national security people. I have been making statements about the stupidity of bringing the followers of ISIS home. I mean, they committed an act of treason. They left their countries, and many of them burned their passports as a sign that they weren't going back. They did this to devote their lives to Muhammad and his God, Allah. So Le Soir, out of Belgium, has an article entitled Belgians in Syria. One of 6 repatriated women circulates freely. 6 women who were repatriated to Belgium from Syria are still deprived of their liberty. Justice Minister Vincent van Quickenborne confirmed in the House last week. One of them had been circulating freely since October. This is on Tuesday. This came out, people. The person in question, S.A., they're not going to tell her name, 34, left for Syria in 2015, a year after the terrorist group Islamic State declared a caliphate there. Once brought back to Belgium, she was imprisoned because she had been sentenced by default to 5 years in prison. She opposed the decision, and in mid-October, the court reduced her suspended sentence to 3 years, after which she was released on conditions. Asked by a deputy last week, Minister Van Quickenborn therefore seemed to have misinformed about the prosecutions as a federal prosecution. Our documents were not up to date, so it was a mistake, and commented the spokesperson. Minister didn't wish. They don't know where she is. They don't know where she is. Yeah, walking about freely. Eric, do you think that's good for national security? I think you're muted.
What could have hurt? I mean, of course. I mean, we're a big enough country to allow these people into the country and let them roam freely. I mean, you wouldn't get like a San Bernardino. That would never happen if we vetted people correctly. This is an illustration of how Europe has lost its soul. Where they're so scared. It's pathetic. And I think we touched on this either last Tuesday or last Sunday, where the people in Europe are so afraid of being called racist, bigots, any type of phobe or whatsoever, that they will sacrifice their security for this. They will say, okay, well, we don't dare, keep crime statistics for the number of people coming from XYZ country into our country committing crimes, or people from certain ethnicities from different countries coming into our country and committing crimes. They don't do that. Why? Because the worst crime that they could possibly commit or be possibly accused of would be racism or some type of bigotry towards an ethnicity or a religion. When you look at what happened to Sweden, I mean, I know I'm kind of pushing things out here from Belgium to Sweden, but Sweden is lost. They're going to lose that country to Islamic invasion. Why? Because they're afraid of their own shadow, of being called, and the whole thing stems from Nazism. It stems from the National Socialism. They don't ever want to even be even closely or remotely associated with that. And this is the calling card. This is the card that every single one of these groups plays against them. You keep your mouth shut. You don't dare speak out against this, the Islamic immigration and all these immigrants that are committing all of these crimes against.
And Sweden has unique cultural problems that allow for a lot of these problems. One of them, I was in Sweden in 2016, and Middle East Forum had a fact-finding expedition on the Islamization of Europe. And when I was in Stockholm, I met with a member of parliament. I met with several interesting people, is what I should say. It was kind of a shock to see how things were. One of the things we learned there on day one about culture in Sweden is that they have a culture against asking questions. And to me, that is contradictory to the term education, because we teach, our whole teaching method, at least in this country, is based on asking questions. In fact, we have teaching methods established called the Socratic method, and it's all based on getting the kids to ask questions. And if you don't ask questions, you can't seek knowledge. So one of the things that happened in Sweden is that in 2015, when this massive hijra hit, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands came to Europe, and believe me, it hasn't stopped, people. When they came to Sweden, they had a deal going. If persons said they were from Syria, because that's where ISIS was, they automatically gave them citizenship, which gave them the right to vote, which gave them the right to run as politicians. So, you're hearing this stuff, okay? Here's the other thing they didn't ask. Do you have any proof of who you are? You could be purple. You could be green, orange, yellow, blue, brown, who knows what color. You said you're from Syria. They automatically gave you citizenship. Another thing they didn't ask for proof of. How old are you? So they had men as old as in their 40s claiming they were in elementary school. And they have actual pictures, we were shown pictures of men in their 40s competing in sports with kids 12 and and you could see these men with they've grown some facial hair, and they're competing. And again, you have to understand the Swedes don't ask questions. That's what they say. They say they don't. This is why Kent Eckroth of the Swedish Democrats is out there telling the truth. And for those of you interested, I want to point you to the website samnytt.se. I believe this is one of Kent Eckroth's works. Samnytt. It's incredibly important. The Swedish Democrats are the conservatives. They are the last stronghold, and I don't believe they're actually very strong anymore because they have been infiltrated, just like the Republican Party here has been infiltrated. So they're fighting to survive, to get the truth out, and it's just bad. Now, you ask.
I didn't mean to take you off the topic of Belgium, Paul. I'm sorry.
No. I think that is it's what it comes down to. They in all of Europe, they don't ask questions; they just accept it because it's too controversial to ask questions. It makes you a racist. It makes you whatever. So your question actually brings me to this next article I had.
Hey, Paul, I gotta run.
Okay. Thank you for sharing with me.
All right. God bless you, brother.
God bless. So this next article on the same topic here. France, rioters armed with hand grenades attacked the presidential candidate Eric Zemmour at a rally, shouting Allahu Akbar, Allah's willing executioners. This article came out on December 6th. Think about this. The threats have been getting stronger and stronger over the past month. As Life Figure reports, the threat to Tanguy David, a declared supporter of Eric Zemmour, has intensified since he started attending a man's meetings. Now, I want you to think about this. They came with hand grenades. I started this article earlier. They are concerned because he's black, he's supporting somebody. They want to kill this man based on the fact that he's black and he doesn't agree with them. And they're screaming Allah Akbar about it. So this is scary, scary stuff. I mean, this is crazy, crazy stuff. The truth is out there, people. The truth is out there. You have to be people to do the research yourself and finding out things. Now, who's actually doing that lately? Well, local state school board associations have been doing their own research. The National School Board Association has lost 17 state affiliates that have pulled out. So there are some people that are actually starting to do their own research. Will it be how many people? Countries have to start doing their own research. We have state departments. We have in the United States, we have state departments. In other countries, they call it the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We have people who are in this country. We have vetting done through organizations, federal departments that look at organizations to look at people to see if they can be trusted to come to America. Yet we have invited 100,000 people here without any vetting. Without any vetting. You think I'm wrong, do your research and you will discover I am actually correct. Some things are just too horrific. And I wish I was wrong. Now, I have been saying since oh my gosh, since August, that this entire insanity to bring 100,000 Muslims here to the United States was planned. All of this insanity is incredibly true. You're going to see that as time goes on. You're going to see that I was not only right, but that there are several commentators who agree with me. And yet I feel like I'm one of the only ones out there saying these things. Eric and the other great people that join us, and they see this reality too. What is the purpose? And we don't ask those questions. Who's out there telling lies? Who's out there deceiving people? Now, in the United States, we have an organization here called the Muslim Brotherhood, that is composed of organizations such as CARE, which is actually Hamas in America. They used to be in what was considered IAP, the Islamic Association of Palestine. Now they changed their name because they were getting sued and they owed millions, so they changed their name because they took part in paying for basically a murder in Israel. They financed a jihad. And this is the people that the media puts up whenever something is said. Now, the media likes to hide the fact that CARE is anti-Semitic, that they hate Jews. And, my suggestion, if you want to find some actual evidence on this, is to start going to the Investigative Project on Terrorism. You can read a few articles. There's a series on them called CARE, Anti-Semitism Ignored or Embraced by the Elected. What does it mean when your state officials and your federal officials start endorsing CARE, which has endorsed terrorist organizations? I'm not kidding here. This is reality. You can find evidence of this. It's there. Start doing your own research. When I get really concerned about this is when you see federal officials and state officials looking for CARE's backing. Who has that? Omar, Representative Omar. Yeah. You have several people. It's not just one or two people. You have the representative of Massachusetts, Richard Blumenthal, backing CARE proudly. People, what does it mean when your representatives seek endorsements of those who love to endorse terrorism? Those who love to hate. These are things that actually need to be looked at. There is too much news out there on this topic. Why is all this being permitted? Because it allows for the end to come. And in Islam, that would be converting you guys and me to Islam. That will allow them, this is why the 100,000 have been brought here, that would allow them to actually step up and start to commit acts of violence. They don't feel like they have enough here, so they won't be killed off too quickly. So when they get to a certain number, then they can commit regular acts of jihad as they are in Europe. Every day in Europe, you can find an article. I wish to God I was wrong. But I see these articles almost every day where a jihadi, a person who is a great believer in Islam, a devout follower of Islam, has either raped or murdered or stabbed or assaulted someone for the cause of Allah. This happens every day because in Europe they have reached what they consider a number safe enough that they will not be killed when they do these things. In Europe, they reached this number in the 70s. Yeah, it was before this last Hijrah. How do I know it was in the 70s? When you start to look at the history of these grooming gangs, they started in the 70s, people. Oriana Fallaci documented it. Yeah. Oriana Fallaci. People pick up her blue book and her red book. That woman was a prize fighter as a journalist. She pulled no punches. She's all important and must be read. If you can, get people to read her work. It's extremely important. It's extremely important. As I said, check my sources. Do not trust what I'm saying to be true. Go find out for yourself. There are some out there who insist what I'm sharing is hateful. I'm not denying it's hateful, but I'm not the one who made these things up. I'm not the one who wrote these things. I cited Islamic scripture. Now, I caught someone on the BTR channel making a comment saying I was hateful. Apparently, he didn't realize I was quoting Islamic scripture. Now, again, if I'm quoting Islamic scripture and you're calling me hateful, why am I hateful? For checking my sources? People do not trust anyone. One of the things I love that Ronald Reagan said, which I think every Christian, every American has a duty to do, is his statement, trust but verify. Okay. As I was pointing out earlier, I was cited in an academic journal. Okay. I looked through the journal article. Funny thing, I'm cited, but they don't refer to anything I said. In our reality, Western civilization, his work, these are actually two people, I should say, their work would not be considered scholarly enough because they don't even understand the concept of references. It's a little bit different scholarly. See, in a scholarly article, you can have you can have articles you've read, but you can only you can only put as a reference those articles you actually cite. They showed no proof of having read my article, my book, I should say. Now, I'm going to tell people, please, if you like what I'm doing and you want to support me in any way, you can go to Amazon, up my books. They're out there. They're there for you to pick up, there for you to read, there for you to check out the things I'm doing. Tell the truth. Get the things out. Love walking the talk. John 16:2, she writes, "These things I have spoken unto you, that you should not be offended. They shall put you out of the synagogues. Yea, the time comes that whosoever kills you will think that he does God a service." Well, the truth is, when you serve God, you don't have a reason to fear. God gives you armor for your front. I want you to think about that. So he's got your back. That's the cool thing. I have yet to live in fear. I've had days I was concerned. So far, that's only been from the feds under Obama. Now we have Dementia Biden in office. I don't think he's capable of making me concerned. I want to tell you there are some great organizations out there. There are some great shows to watch that are part of Global Patriot Radio. And one of those is tomorrow we have Dr. Andrew Herod on. He's on at noon. You definitely want to listen to him. His work is outstanding. I know Andrew Herod personally. I think he's, again, I've met him, talked with him. He surprises me every time. I love his articles. If you go to then Saturday, we have Usama Dakdok with Christy Johnson in the Straightway Ministry of Grace. You definitely want to come listen. That they start at 10 o'clock at night on Saturday. And then Sunday, we have Erica Kafiristan. Again, outstanding. He's here he's here Sundays and Tuesdays. And then you come back on Monday, we have the Vito Esposito show. And then we have Wednesday, we have Hank of Polysports. There are other great men out there, Chris Claus, Rad, and a number of others who are out there getting the truth out. We have to fight to get the truth out. It's so important. What does that mean today? Being bold. Putting books like mine in your local library. Find a way to do it. Get the truth out, people. Get it out. However you can do it, find a way. If you write to me and give me a social studies teacher's name, I might just send them my book, What Social Studies Teachers Need to Know About Islam. My email is berean_research@yahoo.com. Send me an email. Tell me a social studies teacher who needs to know the truth about Islam. I'll send them my book at my expense. My goal is to get the truth out. God bless you all. We're going to be saying good night here. See you soon. God bless.